There's a moment every woman recognizes the instant you catch your reflection and think, something about my hair is deciding my whole mood today. It's subtle, almost invisible to others, yet it shapes how confidently you walk into a room. After 60, that moment becomes even more powerful, because your hair isn't just a style. It's the frame of your story. The right cut can brighten your eyes, soften the angles of life that time has etched gently onto your face, and remind you that beauty never disappears, it simply evolves. Welcome to a space where that evolution is celebrated. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found your way in. This is where women over 60 rediscover style, without pressure, perfectionism, or trend chasing. Here, we focus on elegance that feels lived in, choices that feel natural, and confidence that grows from understanding what truly flatters you, not what the fashion cycle dictates. Every week, I share simple, thoughtful ways to elevate your look with grace and intention. And today, we're stepping into one of the most transformative topics of all: haircuts that instantly refresh your appearance. Not dramatic makeovers, not harsh changes, just smart, flattering adjustments that illuminate your features and bring back that spark when you look in the mirror. Because the truth is, the right haircut doesn't make you look younger by pretending you're someone you used to be. It makes you look younger by revealing the woman you still are. And the wrong one? It can weigh you down, blur your natural radiance, and send a message that doesn't match the energy you feel inside. So settle in with your cup of tea or your morning coffee. In just a moment, we'll dive into 3 beautifully timeless cuts that lift, soften, and brighten, and 3 that quietly work against you. By the end, you'll walk into your next salon appointment feeling informed, empowered, and completely ready to choose a look that celebrates the woman you've become. Section A, the soft layered bob. There's a certain kind of magic in witnessing a woman rediscover herself. I once worked with a client in her early 60s who carried a heaviness in her hair that didn't match the lightness in her spirit. Her bob sat in a single, solid block, no movement, no lift, no softness. She told me she felt like her reflection wasn't keeping up with the woman she still felt like inside. When we introduced soft, airy layers and released the weight around her jawline, her entire face seemed to rise. Her smile looked easier. Her eyes looked brighter. And she whispered, almost surprised, "There you are." That's the quiet power of a soft layered bob. It doesn't shout for attention, it simply restores balance. The layers don't have to be dramatic. In fact, the most flattering ones are barely noticeable, until you see how naturally they let the hair swing and breathe. When the layers are placed at the right points just below the cheekbones, grazing the jaw, lifting gently around the crown, they act like subtle scaffolding, guiding the eye upward. That upward motion is what makes the face appear refreshed, as if someone has softly tilted a lamp to illuminate your best angles. What makes this cut particularly youthful for women over 60 is the interplay between movement and light. Hair that sits stiffly against the face tends to create shadows in the very areas we want to brighten. But hair that floats, that shifts as you turn your head, catches light the way silk catches a breeze. It gives life to your expression and softens the features that tell your story. Even if your hair has thinned over the years, these gentle layers can create the illusion of fullness without overwhelming the natural texture. And if your hair is thick, the layers shape it into something modern and effortless, instead of dense or heavy. When you go to your stylist, think in terms of airiness and lift. Ask for layers that don't chop into the hair but blend gradually, almost like watercolor shading. Chin length or just below. The chin tends to be the sweet spot, because it highlights the neck in a graceful way without dragging downward. And if you enjoy bangs, a soft side-swept fringe can be a beautiful finishing touch. It frames the eyes, skims past the forehead, and adds that gentle sense of youthfulness without trying too hard. One of the things I love most about this cut is its adaptability. You can wear it smooth and polished for a sleek, classic look, or tousle it lightly with your fingers for something casual and playful. Either way, it never feels fussy. It never demands perfect styling. It simply works with you, not against you. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly to yourself. When was the last time your haircut made you feel lighter, not just physically, but emotionally? Because for many women, the moment they soften their bob is the moment they realize how much they've been carrying in that extra weight around their face. There's also a deeper emotional shift that often happens with this style. Women tell me they feel returned to themselves, as if the layers remove not just heaviness in the hair, but also the quiet belief that aging requires shrinking your style. A soft layered bob reminds you that sophistication doesn't have to be severe. It can be gentle, feminine, and full of movement. And just when you start to understand how transformative softness and lift can be, it becomes even more important to talk about the type of bob that works against all of this, one that seems classic at first glance, but can quietly add years instead of taking them away. Section B: the blunt bob. A lot of women choose the blunt bob because it feels familiar, almost like a safe uniform they've worn for decades. And at first glance, it does look sharp, clean edges, a straight line, a sense of order. But the very precision that once felt modern can turn surprisingly harsh as our features evolve with time. I've seen women with beautifully warm, expressive faces suddenly appear weighed down simply because the cut created a hard frame that didn't match the softness of their natural beauty. A blunt bob has no movement to cushion the face. The hair drops in a single, heavy curtain, landing right where many women start to lose definition along the jawline. Instead of lifting, it settles. Instead of opening the face, it encloses it. And because the line is so rigid, any subtle changes in skin texture or fullness around the cheeks and jaw become more pronounced. It's not that the cut is wrong, it's that it's too unforgiving for a face that deserves something far more graceful. What makes this style even trickier is the way it reacts to different hair textures. If your hair has thinned over the years, a blunt bob can make it appear even flatter, almost pressed against the head, removing the softness that keeps a look youthful. If your hair is thick, that same blunt edge can turn into a dense block that overwhelms your features and adds visual weight right where you don't want it. The result is a silhouette that feels bottom-heavy, almost box-like, drawing the eye downward instead of upward. Think of it this way: your haircut is part of the lighting in your personal portrait. A blunt bob casts shadows in downward angles. It settles into the places where you may already feel more awareness along the jowls, the neck, of the sides of the face. And while shadows can be glamorous when placed intentionally, the accidental ones created by a blunt line rarely feel flattering. There's also something emotional that happens with this cut. Many women keep it because it feels like a version of themselves they once loved. They cling to the memory of how confident they felt at 40 or 50 with that sleek, graphic shape. But hair is never static, and neither are we. What once highlighted your features can, without you realizing it, start hiding them. I've had women sit in my chair and admit they didn't realize how much that straight edge was dulling their natural brightness until they finally let it go. Let me ask you something, and answer this without judgment toward yourself. Have you ever stayed with a haircut not because it still suits you, but because changing it felt like letting go of an earlier chapter of your life? It's a more common experience than you might think, and there's such tenderness in acknowledging it. The good news is that avoiding a blunt bob doesn't mean abandoning short hair or structure altogether. It simply means choosing softness over severity. By introducing subtle graduation, gentle layering along the perimeter, or even a slight bevel at the ends, the entire face opens up. Light returns. Movement returns. Your expression becomes the focus again, not the line of the cut. And here's the part that often surprises women. Once they shift away from the blunt edge, they realize they haven't lost anything, they've gained freedom. Freedom in styling, freedom in expression, freedom from feeling boxed in by a shape that no longer reflects who they are. Now that you understand how the wrong kind of bob can unintentionally weigh you down, it's time to explore a length that many women overlook, yet often turns out to be the most flattering middle ground of all, one that brings back softness, elegance, and a lifted silhouette without sacrificing the femininity they love. Section C: the shoulder length cut with gentle layers. There is something undeniably poetic about a shoulder length cut with soft, deliberate layers. It carries a quiet elegance, the kind that doesn't insist on being noticed, but still transforms the way a woman carries herself. I've watched three close friends, each with different hair textures, personalities, and life stories, step into this length almost by accident. One had thick silver waves, one wore her hair sleek and fine, and the third had natural curls that loosened over the years. Yet when each of them arrived at that perfect spot near the shoulders, something shifted. They stood a little taller. Their faces looked brighter. Their features seemed to fall into harmony, as if the hairstyle had reunited them with a version of themselves they thought time had tucked away. This length works because it creates balance, the kind that feels almost architectural. It's long enough to stay feminine, to move gently when you turn your head, to rest gracefully near the collarbone. But it's short enough to keep heaviness from building around the jawline or weighing down the neck. The gentle layers, light, blended, never choppy, allow the hair to dance instead of droop. When the wind moves it, you see highlights shift, shadows soften, and the face becomes the focal point again. For women over 60, this cut often feels like a small revelation. Our hair naturally changes with age. It may lose density, texture, or volume. Very long hair can magnify those changes, while very short hair can sometimes feel like too drastic a departure from the softness we want to preserve. The shoulder length cut becomes the middle ground that feels safe, yet modern, flattering yet effortless. It works with your natural texture instead of fighting it. And most beautifully, it lets your hair express who you are now, not who you used to be, or who you feel pressured to become. The emotional impact of this length is something I see again and again. Women have told me they feel lighter, not just because the cut removes physical weight, but because it removes the emotional weight of holding on to styles that no longer serve them. One woman in her 70s described it perfectly. "I didn't realize how much I was hiding behind my hair until I stopped hiding." That clarity is what makes this style so powerful. It doesn't ask you to look younger. It simply lets your beauty rise to the surface. Practicality is another quiet luxury of this cut. You can wear it loose and soft, tucked behind one ear, gently waved for a touch of romance, or pulled back into a low ponytail or bun when you want polish. It adapts to your day instead of demanding a routine. When layered correctly, it's resilient. You can step out into humidity, wind, or a long afternoon, and still look modern without effort. That freedom matters more than people realize. Let me ask you something, and let it settle for a moment. When you imagine the woman you are becoming, not the woman you were, what does her hair look like? Does it move with her? Does it reflect her ease, her confidence, her wisdom? So many women answer yes to those questions, and they don't even know it until they see themselves at this length. There's also a tenderness in choosing a style that honors your current chapter. Hair holds memory, but it also holds possibility. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to choose a cut that matches how vibrant you feel on the inside. And for countless women, the shoulder-length cut becomes the bridge between who they've been and who they are joyfully becoming. As transformative as this style can be, though, it gains even more clarity when placed next to its opposite. A length many women hold on to out of habit or nostalgia, even as it quietly adds years and pulls their features downward. And that's exactly the kind of hair we need to talk about next. Section D. Very long, heavy hair without shape. There's a certain kind of longing wrapped up in very long hair, especially for women who've worn it most of their lives. I once met a woman in her early 70s who carried her waist-length hair like a memory. He said she kept it because her husband loved it 40 years ago, and cutting it felt like letting go of a version of herself she wasn't ready to say goodbye to. But as she spoke, she ran her fingers through the ends, and they were fragile, thinned by time, frayed from years of devotion. When she lifted her hair away from her neck, her whole face softened, almost as if she didn't realize how heavy it had become until that moment of release. This is the quiet truth about very long hair after 60. It isn't just about length. It's about weight. And weight, no matter how beautiful the intention behind it, always pulls down. Long, heavy hair without shape creates a downward motion that mirrors itself on the face. It draws the eye toward the jawline, the neck, the areas where most women feel the earliest signs of time. Instead of offering softness or movement, it settles into place like a curtain that has forgotten how to sway. As the years go by, hair naturally becomes finer. It loses density at the crown and strength at the ends. Add length to that equation, and what was once lush begins to appear sparse. The bottom few inches look stringy, tired, or disconnected from the rest of the style. Even on thick hair, the weight becomes its own kind of burden. It hides the neck, crowds the shoulders, and overwhelms the subtle elegance of your facial structure. And yet the emotional hold of long hair is real. Many women keep it because it symbolizes freedom, femininity, or a version of attractiveness they were taught to maintain. But beauty doesn't diminish when we let go of what no longer serves us. It deepens. It reshapes. It grows in the direction of truth rather than nostalgia. I remember watching that same woman lift her hair again, this time with both hands, and she said quietly, "I didn't realize how much I was carrying." Her voice wasn't sad, it was relieved, as though she had finally given herself permission to feel lighter. When we shortened her hair to just past the shoulders, added soft layers, and gave her shape instead of weight, her entire presence changed. She looked less like she was holding on to the past, and more like she was stepping into herself again. This isn't about cutting your hair short, or abandoning your love for length. It's about giving your hair intention. Long hair can be beautiful at any age, but only when it's shaped, layered, and cared for in a way that works with your features rather than pulling them down. When the length is balanced, perhaps just below the collarbone or skimming the shoulders, you gain all the movement and romance without the heaviness. You gain freedom. You gain visibility. You gain yourself. Let me ask you, gently and honestly, are you keeping your hair long because you love it, or because you're afraid of what letting go might mean? It's okay if the answer surprises you. Sometimes our hair becomes a chapter we've forgotten to close, even when the next one is waiting to be written. There's a profound emotional shift that happens when a woman releases length she no longer needs. She doesn't become less feminine. She becomes more unmistakably herself. She finds clarity in her features again. She finds light around her face. She finds a softness that no amount of length could ever provide. But if long hair without shape can pull your look downward, there's an opposite kind of transformation waiting on the other end of the spectrum, one that lifts, energizes, and reveals your face in a way that feels liberating rather than intimidating. And that's the kind of haircut we're stepping into next. Section E: the textured pixie. There's a particular moment I've seen many times in my career when a woman who has spent years hiding behind her hair finally decides to step into a short, textured pixie. It often starts with a quiet kind of courage. The kind you feel in your chest before you ever say it out loud. One woman in her late 60s told me he'd been thinking about cutting her hair short for 5 years, but couldn't bring herself to do it. "It's silly," she said, "but I worry people will see too much of me." When she finally sat in the chair and gave me a small, certain nod, something inside her shifted. As the first pieces fell, she watched her reflection with a mix of fear, curiosity, and something like hope. And when the cut was finished, soft texture around the edges, gentle volume at the crown, a wispy side fringe framing her eyes. She looked at herself and whispered, "I feel like I can breathe again." It wasn't the haircut that changed her. It was the way she suddenly recognized herself without the weight of old expectations. A textured pixie has that power. Unlike severe short cuts that cling tightly to the head or carve sharp, unforgiving lines around the face, the textured pixie is all about softness and movement. The layers are feathered, fluid, intentional. They create dimension rather than stark contrast. The volume at the crown lifts the face in a way no makeup trick ever could. Even the subtle sweep of fringe across the forehead can soften lines and draw attention toward the eyes, where so much warmth and intelligence live. This cut works beautifully for women whose hair has thinned over time. Shorter lengths give fine strands a sense of fullness they can never achieve when they're weighed down. And for women with thicker hair, texture reduces density and keeps the silhouette modern instead of bulky. It's the rare style that adapts to you rather than demanding you adapt to it. What makes the textured pixie particularly youthful isn't its length, it's its energy. There's a lightness to it, a sense of motion even when the hair is still. When you tilt your head, the layers shift. When you smile, the fringe follows the curve of your expression. When you step outside, the breeze catches the texture and creates a softness that feels almost poetic. It's a style that doesn't try to hide you. It reveals you gently, respectfully, beautifully. There's also something profoundly freeing about letting go of the belief that femininity is tied to length. Many women tell me they worry short hair will make them appear too sharp or too exposed. But the textured pixie does the opposite. By embracing softness around the face, it highlights the very features that make a woman look alive: her eyes, her cheekbones, the natural lift in her smile. It brings attention to the parts of you that only grow more expressive with time. Let me ask you a question, and let it sit with you for a moment. If you woke up tomorrow with a haircut that took less than 5 minutes to style, that made your eyes shine, that made you feel lighter just by running your hand through it, would that feel like freedom? For many women, that freedom becomes a turning point, a small act of reclaiming themselves. There is emotion wrapped up in this choice too. A textured pixie often arrives at a moment in life when a woman is ready to stop making decisions out of fear and start making them out of truth. It doesn't erase years, it honors them. It reflects the confidence, the resilience, the humor, the tenderness, all the things that have shaped you into who you are now. And when a woman sees her face fully again, unshadowed and unhidden, she often discovers she never needed length to feel feminine. She only needed authenticity. But while a textured pixie can illuminate your features and lift your entire expression, the wrong kind of short cut can have the opposite effect. There's a specific overly severe style, sharp, rigid, almost architectural, that many women choose because they think it's practical. when in reality it can harden the face and dim the softness you want to keep. And that is the kind of shortcut we need to look at next. Section F: the bowl cut, or overly severe short crop. There are few moments more disheartening than when a woman sits in my chair with a short cut that was meant to be easy. That's how makes her feel less like herself. I remember one woman in particular: wide smile, kind eyes, a natural warmth that made everyone around her feel welcome. But her haircut, a rigid bowl shape that hugged her head like an ill-fitting helmet, seemed to silence all of that softness. She told me she had chosen the style because the stylist said it was low maintenance and lifted the face. Instead, she felt exposed in all the wrong ways, as though the cut announced her age louder than she ever intended. The challenge with the bowl cut, or overly severe crop, is not the length itself. Short hair can be stunning. It's the structure: tight, strict, immovable. A bowl cut circles the head in a hard line that interrupts the natural curves of the face. It creates a width around the eyebrows and temples that most women don't want, amplifying roundness and diminishing definition. Meanwhile, an ultra-short, razor-sharp crop removes all softness, leaving only angles where you might prefer ease and fluidity. These rigid shapes don't allow hair to move, and movement is what makes any style feel alive. Without it, the hair becomes a frame that can look more like a boundary, boxing in your features rather than highlighting them. The cut draws the eye toward the exact areas women often wish to balance: lines around the mouth, softening skin along the jawline, fullness in the cheeks. Even the most expressive face can appear tense when surrounded by a silhouette that refuses to relax. Then there's the emotional weight these cuts often carry. Many women choose them because they want something practical, something that won't require fussing. Others choose them because they've been told short hair is age-appropriate, as if style should shrink with every passing decade. But I've seen time and time again that what women truly want isn't minimal effort, it's minimal compromise. They want a haircut that honors who they are now, not one that limits them. Short hair can absolutely do that. But it must do it with intention. It must have softness somewhere, texture around the crown, a gentle taper at the nape, a bit of length at the fringe to frame the eyes, or layers that shift when you move. Severe cuts don't give you room to express emotion through your hair. They have one shape, one mood, one message. And that single message often competes with the natural warmth of a woman's face. I often ask women who come in with these styles a simple question: when you look at yourself with this haircut, do you feel more open or more guarded? It's remarkable how quickly the answer surfaces. Many admit they feel sharper than they want to feel, as if the haircut has taken away the softness they still carry inside. Others say they never realized why look until someone helped them see that the structure, not the length, was the problem. What I love about correcting a severe short cut is that it doesn't take much to bring a woman back into harmony with her reflection. A few added layers, some length at the top, a gentle sweep at the front, suddenly the face lights up again. The warmth returns. The personality returns. The woman returns. And it's always a beautiful moment. There's a visible release, a sense that she can breathe more fully now that her haircut reflects her true energy. That is the difference softness can make. It doesn't erase age, it celebrates it with grace. You deserve a style that moves with you, not one that confines you. You deserve a cut that mirrors your kindness, your strength, your humor, your depth. And now that you've seen the styles that lift, and the styles that unintentionally age, there's a larger truth at the heart of it. All something more important than any single haircut. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the conclusion. When you step back and look at all 6 styles, 3 that lift and 3 that quietly weigh you down, it's clear. Your haircut, should work in partnership with who you are today, not who you used to be or who someone else believes you should become. Softness, movement, light, and intention are what keep your look fresh. Harsh lines, heavy length, and rigid shapes are what pull that freshness away. But more than that, your hair is a reflection of how you feel inside. When it moves, you move. When it brightens your features, you brighten from within. And when it aligns with the woman you are now, wise, expressive, vibrant, it stops being just hair and becomes a form of self-respect. You're not choosing a style to chase youth. You're choosing a style that honors your beauty at this stage of life. A layered bob that brings light to your eyes. A shoulder-length cut that feels like coming home. A textured pixie that frees you to express yourself without hesitation. These aren't makeovers, they're reminders that age has given you depth, character, and confidence, and your hair can reflect all of that effortlessly. Before you go, I want to ask you something meaningful. Are you wearing a haircut that supports the woman you are becoming, or one that keeps you anchored in a chapter you've already outgrown? Only you can answer that, and the next time you sit in your stylist's chair, that answer will guide you better than any trend ever could. If today's video helped you feel more informed, more inspired, or simply more hopeful about your next haircut, I'd love for you to give it a thumbs up. It tells me this kind of content matters to you, and it helps other women find their way here too. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would be honored to have you join this community, where style after 60 isn't an ending, but a gorgeous new beginning. Now I'd love to hear from you. Are you thinking about trying one of the youthful cuts we talked about today? Or have you already found a style that makes you feel unmistakably yourself? Share it in the comments. Your story might be the encouragement another woman needs to make her own beautiful change. Remember this: you are not too old to be modern. You are not too old to be elegant. You are not too old to shine. Style doesn't stop at 60. It simply becomes more meaningful.